I received some questions about using the Canvas equation editor after exam 1. So I thought I would just complete one of the problems so you can see exactly how I use the Canvas equation editor. And more specifically, the questions were about how to start a new line to show your calculations in a vertical format. So let's take a look at question 35. Greg ran 12 miles this month. If he ran 6/5 of a mile every day he ran, how many days did Greg run? Now, the first thing we need to figure out here is how to interpret this question. Basically, this question is asking us how many copies of 6/5 of a mile are in the 12 miles total that he ran. So I'm going to type that here. So how many copies of 6/5 of a mile are in 12 miles? So because I'm wording it that way, because that's the way that that's what the question is asking us to do, that leads me to know that this is a division problem. I need to take up the total 12 miles that Greg ran, and I need to divide it into chunks of 6/5 of a mile. So this becomes the following division problem, and this is where I'm going to go into my Canvas equation editor and enter that division problem. So 12 is my starting amount. I have 12 miles total, and I want to know how many times a distance of 6/5 of a mile will fit into those 12 total miles. So I'm dividing it by the fraction 6/5. So I'm going to click 6 for the numerator, and then I'm going to click in the denominator and get my 5. Now, that's just one step. So I'm going to insert that equation. To get to the next line, I'm just going to press enter. And now I'm going to enter my next step. So if I have 12 divided by 6/5, well, I know that when I divide by a fraction, I can multiply by the reciprocal and get the same result. So I'm going to insert another new equation. And now this is going to become 12 times the reciprocal, which will become 12 times 5/6. And I'm going to insert that equation, and then I'm going to press enter. In order to multiply a whole number by a fraction, it can often be helpful to rewrite the whole number as a fraction over 1. So this is going to become 12/1 times the fraction 5/6. Now you have some options here. You can divide out common factors. I see that 12 and 6 share a common factor of 6. You can also just multiply straight across and then simplify. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to multiply my numerators, and 12 times 5 is going to give me 60. So I'm going to get 60 in my numerator, and then in my denominator, I'm going to do the 1 times 6. It's going to give me 60/6. And I'm going to press enter, and then I'm just going to press equals because I'm done now. So that's a final answer of 10. But you can see I use the Canvas equation editor to show my symbols for division, to show my fractions, and to show it in a step-by-step nature. Now, one other thing I wanted to touch on was that it's very important that we label our final answer. I need to say what this number 10 stands for, because that helps me decide if my answer was reasonable or not. So the number 10 tells me that Greg ran for 10 days. So I'm going to add a final statement at the end of my question. So if I go back up here, notice the question asked me how many days did Greg run? So I'm going to finish my work, and I'm going to say Greg ran for 10 days. Well, I guess we don't really know if he ran them in a row. So we'll just say Greg ran for 10 days. I was going to say Greg ran for 10 days in a row, but we don't really know if they were in a row. So Greg ran for 10 days. If I really wanted to take a step forward and really make sure that my answer was correct, I would check by multiplying. So if he ran 6/5 of a mile per day, so let's do 6/5 of a mile per day. If he did that for 10 days, if I multiply 6/5 times 10, and really quick, I'm just going to put in here that I'm checking my answer now. Okay. So if he ran for 6/5 a mile for 10 days, if I multiply those two fractions together, I should get the total of 12 miles from the beginning of the problem. So my next step would be 6/5, whoops, let's get that fraction back. 6, make sure I click in the denominator, fifths, and then I want to multiply that by the fraction 10/1. And if I multiply straight across, 6 times 10 in my numerator is going to give me 60. 5 times 1 in my denominator is going to give me 5. And then if I do that division, I get 12. So I know that my answer, that Greg ran for 10 days, let's make that a little bit bigger so we know that that's the answer. I know that that's correct because I checked it and I got back to the 12 miles. So 6/5 of a mile each day for 10 days gives me 12 miles total. So I know that Greg ran for 10 days, and that's what we mean by labeling your answer. So again, it says it up here, label your final answer. So in the instructions, it always tells you to label. So we mean a little sentence is nice, definitely keep those units. So I want to know that 10 stands for the amount of days. So this right here, Greg ran for 10 days, that would be my final answer. Hope this helped, and this will definitely help you for the next exam.